Welcome, friends. In this episode of the Grieving Nurse podcast, we are going to talk about when you've lost that person that was the person that supported you. What do you do? So, welcome, friends. Please like, subscribe, follow all the things for this podcast. But this episode, we're going to talk about when you've lost a loved one who was your support system, who was the person that you called and talked to and leaned on. What do you do when you've lost that person? And so I was coaching somebody the other day who was going through this, right? They had lost a parent, and they're like, this was the person that I called. This was my go-to person. And towards the end, I think he had dementia, maybe some Alzheimer's, but like dementia for sure. And then, she's like, he couldn't even speak, um, and talk, but she's like, He always, and she didn't say this exactly. This is kind of paraphrasing, but that he just looked with her with so much love and just like when he could speak, like he was always just curious on what she was going through and talking through things with her and just really genuinely wanted to know about her life, was interested in the things she was talking about, would ask follow-up questions. And she's like, now I don't have anybody to do that. And so, we did some coaching on this and kind of what it boiled down to was she did have a couple friends that she could lean on, but I also helped her to see that we can do this for ourselves. And now that's not taking away from friendships, companionship, right? Like we're made to have communion, to be with other people, to share our experiences. Like we are not meant to be alone and isolated and not talk to others. Like we're not meant for that. So there is something to be said for having friendships and going out and meeting up with people or talking to a spouse or a sibling about things. But I'm talking about when you do have people in your life, right? When you have friends or relatives or a spouse, but they just don't have quite the finesse that your loved one had. Like they don't quite ask the questions, they don't quite make you feel as safe as your loved one did. And so, first and foremost, it's to recognize and to understand how did your loved one make you feel safe? How did they make you feel supported? Right? Because again, with all of this, like our feelings come and go. And so there were certain maybe hand gestures or looks on their face or tone of their voice, or there were actions. Maybe they give you a hug. Like there were actions that then you had a thought and it made you feel a certain way, right? And again, our feelings can come and go. And so just really breaking down like what did my loved one do that really made me feel safe? I know for me, for my mom, like she just had so much knowledge. She she was a counselor and she was a counselor later in life. She didn't go back to get that degree until my siblings and I were all in college or out of the house. And so growing up, like she didn't always have the best answers, but she just was a very person who was strong in her faith. Um, you just felt safe when you talked to her. You didn't feel like it was going to be about her. Like there was times, again, in our flawedness, maybe that was true, but you really felt like she was trying to work with you to get to this greater goal or to like have a dialogue and talk about this issue. Um, and so that was really how my mom made me feel safe and how I could ask her questions about things. And then my dad, like, he didn't, he just didn't talk that much. Like, he, he was a very quiet person. But I always knew he was interested in the things I had to say in the way, like, he would recall details later. Like, so for example, I remember one time it really stuck out to me how my dad, like this was years later. Like I went to prom. I went to prom 3 different times. Um, and the one time, like it was, I don't know, maybe a year or two after that one prom, or maybe a few months later, he was like, "Oh, like my favorite dress was this one that you wore." And I was like, "What? Oh, like I didn't even know you paid attention or remembered." But he's like, "Well, yeah, of course I pay attention." Like, so it was just very comforting to me to know like my dad doesn't say a lot of words, but he does pay attention and he does love me. Like when I mean again, like he not perfect, not a perfect person, right? But he just was a very like consistent person in my life who, again, I knew I could come and talk to if I needed to. I would more likely go to my mom to talk about things, but just knowing that like my dad paid attention to details in my life and he cared and he felt like I mattered and he loved me in little ways, like changing my oil when I would come home from college or changing the tires, right? Like just like those little acts of service was more his gentle, quiet way of loving me. And so those are just a couple examples of things that my parents did. And I would even say like to get really specific in just the way the phrases that that person used, right? Like so for me it was like my dad, like of course I noticed, right? Like of course I noticed. It just meant to me that he cared. And so then writing those things down, right? Like those key phrases or the things they would do. Again, when I was coaching this person, she realized like when she talked about things, she wanted people to be genuinely curious and to ask follow-up questions. And what she realized was her one friend did that, and her other friend kind of was a little bit more dismissive or just like, well, like this is fine. I don't know why you're worried about that. Like again, which is not to say that that's a bad thing. That's just how her friend shows up versus the other friend. And so she recognized, like maybe on hard days or when I'm going through a more acute grieving period, that I should talk to this friend who comforts me and says, "You're safe and I'm here to listen if you want to talk," instead of the more dismissive friend. And so, but she only got to that point because we were able to break down what it was exactly that her dad said or did that made her feel loved and made her feel safe. And then she could pinpoint, like, oh, like this friend really does that for me. This one, not so much. I still enjoy this friend. I still enjoy talking to her. But I know now, like, when I'm more acute in my grief, I'm gonna maybe be like, no, I can't come out tonight. Or no, maybe next week we can meet up for coffee. Like, just taking care of yourself in those little ways goes a long way. And then when you do have your list of go-to phrases or little gestures that they did for you, to know also that you 100% can say those things to yourself, that you can 100% show up and be like, you know what? I think my mom would have bought me a cup of coffee today, and she would have bought me some random thing from the grocery store, and she would have brought it to my house to show me that she cared. And so that's what I'm going to do for myself today to just feel that little bit of love that I need. And so, again, this can look like so many different things. It can look like phrases just saying, like, you are safe, you are loved, I'm here. And two, like you can always journal or even like talk into your phone and record a message for yourself to hear back later. Just like saying those things like that your loved one would have said, or little phrases and things that they would have done to support you. So then when you are having a harder day, like you can just hit play and you can hear that little message from yourself on how to support yourself. And then two, I always recommend just like the very tangible things of sleep, exercise, water, right? Because when we take care of ourselves physically, we also feel better mentally. But this is more to say how you can show up for yourself in the way that your loved one did, that now you feel like you don't have that anymore, that you can kind of imitate that. Or even I have done this too, where for my husband, I will say, okay, I'm having a hard day. I want to cry and I want to vent. And I want you at the end to say, I'm so sorry that you're going through that. And I want you to give me a hug. Like I give him the words to say, the action to take, and it makes me feel better. And even if it is very like mechanical, like it still makes me feel better. So you can also try that, saying like, here's a post-it note with your go-to phrases that I would like you to say. And I think also communicating, right? Because sometimes I am a place where like I want just that, like, I'm sorry and here's a hug. But then there's other times where I do want more input and more problem solving from them and more of like, hey, no, I'm really struggling. Like, I'm struggling, I just want you to listen, or I'm struggling and I do actually want your input on that. So I do think that that is also very cl helpful to be clear when you start the conversation with a person to say, this is where I'm at today, lay out my expectations of what I do want from this this conversation. This is what I need for the day. And then giving them a choice too, right? Being like, can you do this or not? And again, no judgment if you can't, just knowing this is what I need. And so I don't want to force this conversation. And then if it turns south and they're not showing up how I expect, and then they're getting upset, and then it just ends up being like straight up not a good time. So really just communication, I really think is a good thing to have. And again, knowing that it won't be perfect, probably the first, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 times you do it. That this takes practice because you're practicing not only knowing what you need, but also practicing the communication to somebody else. Because there is a lot of stuff that gets lost in translation, or there's a lot of stuff that we just assume they would know or do, and they have no clue. So it is kind of a trial and error thing. But then always know too that you can fall back and you can show up for yourself in that way too, by saying those phrases to yourself, by recording a voice message for yourself to say, hey, like you are so loved, you're amazing, like whatever it is. And you know what you need to hear. So again, oh, before I go, I want to invite you guys to my Catholic grief group. We start June 6th is the next round that we're doing, and it'll be every Friday in June at noon Central. And we come together and it is webinar style. So like if you don't want to be like you won't be on the screen at all, but you can share in the comments and you can share in the Q&A. And then if you do want to come on the screen, I pull you up. And again, you don't have to even have your video on if you don't want. Come as you are. And then we just talk through things. We talk through situations like this when you're like, I just feel like I have nobody. I feel like nobody supports me. I feel so lonely. I feel just like in this miserable place. I can't get out of it. Like, we just talk about those things and share where we're at because again, everybody's in a different grief place, and that's okay. Because then if you are in a really heavy, acute grief, just hearing others share can give you hope and make you feel uplifted and make you feel like you're not alone. So that's why I really love the group is that it is a place where we can all come, we can all share, and whether you just listen in or if you want to share, on the screen, that's fine. But even just listening in can do a 180 on your mood, how you feel, how you're showing up. And so, again, go to catholicgriefcoach.com and you can sign up for the next month of the month of June 2025 of the grief coach group. So, grief grief coaching group. So again, hope you guys check that out. I hope to see you there. I'm so excited about these groups. I love group coaching because it's such a great place for community. It really is. And I just love it. Um, I love because everybody leaves saying like, "Oh my gosh, that was great." And like I feel like that was great. Like I just love it. And so again, catholicgriefcoach.com and sign up for the next grief group. I will hopefully see you June 6th. So I hope you guys have the best possible day that you can, and God bless.